All right, welcome to Friday, March 25th. Good to see you today. Hey, today we're going to read Ruth. Now, it's interesting as we get to the book of Ruth, we're going to see somewhat of a culmination of some of those cold, rigorous laws that we read for the last couple months. We're going to see the injection of love into these things and compassion. So the writer of Ruth is not known. Some people think it's Samuel. Could be. However, Samuel dies before David's crowned, and yet you find in chapter 4, verses 17 and 22, that it talks about David. It doesn't call him king. There's no mention of Solomon. And when you read chapter 4 and it says Salmon, that is actually talking about a different guy. It's not talking about Solomon. So even if it may have been written later, the story happens during the time of the Judges. The last week we've been reading Judges. This happens during that time. So to give you a little background, I was a busy few seconds. Now remember, Moabites and Ammonites are descendants of Lot, and that becomes slightly important in the story. So the theme of Ruth is that loyalty pays off. It certainly does for Ruth here. Naomi ends up being blessed because of it. And the key verse in Ruth would be Ruth chapter 1, verse 16 says this, "And Ruth said, Entreat me not to leave thee, or to return from following after thee. For whither thou goest, I will go, and whither thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people will be my people, and thy God my God." That's just a powerful verse. That's a powerful thing you can say to somebody. The key word in this book would be kinsman, redeemer. And then the key event, obviously, being Ruth chapter 4 and 24 verses, goes from basically a widow with nothing but her mother-in-law to now being, well, we don't want to give away a spoiler there. So, and Christ is pictured as Boaz, the near kinsman redeemer, who can redeem without marring his estate. So as we read through this, as we said already, a key word is loyalty, but a truth is also, we don't move unless God moves us. We don't know what God's doing. The last command I got was to go start a church in Springfield, Oregon. That was 19, 20 years ago, whatever it was. And, he has my name, phone number. I'm not looking for anything else. I'm not looking for another church. Not looking to go anywhere. I'm looking to do what the Lord told me to do here. But you notice there in Ruth chapter 1, verse 1, "Now it came to pass in the days when the judges ruled that there was a famine in the land. And a certain man of Bethlehem, Judah, went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons." So there was a famine in the land. Remember, Bethlehem means literally the bread of God. Look here in Ruth chapter 1, verses 20 and 21. "And she said unto them, Call me not Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty hath dealt very bitterly with me. I went out full." See that in verse 21? She went out full. Too many times we don't focus on the right things. I went out full. There was a famine. "I went out full, and the Lord hath brought me home again empty." Notice also there in verse 1, it says they went to sojourn. They didn't mean to stay there forever. They didn't mean for their sons to marry women of Moab. They went there just to, hey, maybe we'll come back. They just went to sojourn, and it turned into for 3 people to be a lifetime. Mela and Chilian here are somewhat victims here. They're pulled out of God's will, taken down to another place, and end up dying in Moab. But yet, like we've seen so many other times in Scripture and in our own lives, God still works it out. Even if we are not in God's will, plan A for our lives, there is a plan B, there's a plan C, there's a plan D. Doesn't matter how far you go. Starting doing God's will today is what matters. God worked it out, but the price is still pretty steep. So then in the genealogy in Matthew chapter 1, it lists from Abraham down to Joseph. It only lists 4 women in the genealogy, and all of them have Gentile and somewhat, in some areas, some shady background. Didn't list the king's wives, didn't list any of those people, listed 4 women. And one of those women is here, Ruth. And I think that's just a cool story. And then here, let's go ahead and put up the chart for you to look at for a couple moments. 4 chapters, 85 verses, 2,578 words. Again, I didn't count. I'm trusting other people on that. Chapter 1, you're seeing the beginning of the story. Chapters 2 starts bringing the story around. Now, when I mentioned earlier, the law is now brought into a story. We're seeing Leviticus chapter 25 injected with love and compassion. Leviticus 25, if you go back and read it, we read that back in, probably February. There was the whole talk about the Redeemer, the year of Jubilee. And so what would happen is if somebody was poor and maybe had bad crops, whatever the case is, somebody else could buy their land. But the longest mortgage you could have for that land was 50 years. And you set your mortgage and your payment based on how much more time's left until the year of Jubilee. However, let's say you're 20 years old, even 30, and you're somewhere towards the beginning, lose your property. It's not you that gets your land back. It will be your son or your son's son. And so that at the year of Jubilee, remember, everything comes back. So we're not at a year of Jubilee. We are in between. And so do you remember when the sons died and Moses granted that the land goes through the daughters? That's also applied here. So the land is being redeemed. The person is being redeemed. And if you were to redeem, you were also supposed to marry that woman and provide seed for that other name of the man who died. This is all just cool stuff. And so what you're finding here is you're finding the Mosaic law applied. And applied properly, by the way. And so Boaz is aware of this and how it works. So then Naomi knows this. Naomi gets Ruth to, pull on Boaz's heartstrings and does that successfully. Remember, some parts of that, the Bible's descriptive, not telling us what to do. But now Boaz knows the law here, but yet there is somebody who's closer to redeem. So now Boaz goes to sell the idea. And the person who's closer says, yeah, I'll redeem the land. But then knows what Boaz does. Well, there's a little side thing you have to know here. There's also Ruth. And by the way, she's a Moabitess. This presents a couple problems. I would assume that the other man, the nearest kinsman redeemer, is already married. Imagine going home that day and saying, hey, guess what, honey? We're going to have another wife added. Marring that inheritance, the Bible did command that a Moabite is not to enter into the congregation of the Lord. However, here you have Ruth. And so there's a chance that Boaz is going to lose everything, but he's not concerned with it. So now, if the nearest kinsman does redeem, he has to worry about his wife. He has to worry about his kids. He also has to raise up seed to Mahlon or Chilion, whichever one it was. And so then part of the inheritance would have to go to that child. It just messes the whole thing up. So, the guy doesn't want anything to do with it, says, all right, you take it. And here, take my shoe. Now, one last item of business here. You look there in Ruth chapter 4, look at verse 12. Do you see the blessing there? And let thy house be like the house of Pharez. We are a few hundred years removed from when this happened. Do you remember who Pharez is? Judah, remember, there was the first son, and then there was Onan. Then there was the third son, or however that worked. And then there was supposed to be the next son that was supposed to be saved. And then Tamar took matters in her own hands, went and dressed as a harlot, enticed Judah, ended up having twins. Those twins, one of them is Pharez. And so what we find here is Pharez made a name for himself. He was raised in a home where his dad is also his uncle. His grandpa is also his dad. His brothers are also his... Are they his uncles and nephews simultaneously? Not real sure. He was raised in a home where these people were husbands being passed, the husbands being passed back and forth, and everything that was going on. He was raised in a horrible family life, but yet he still turned it around. He still made something of himself, and now here we go, 300-400 years later. May your house be as the house of Pharez. Amazing story. Ruth just brought all of this stuff back together that we just read in the last 5 books. 7 books. That's just cool. Remember when we say that the Bible is just, everything works together, it's all cohesive? You're starting to see that. And then, verses 18 through 22, you find a genealogy. And there towards the end of the chapter, we find that Boaz and Ruth are the great-grandparents of King David. That's cool stuff, don't you think? All right. It's fun just to kind of read a nice, uplifting, great story in the Bible. And hopefully we tied some stuff together for you. Sorry about a little extra long, a longer video than normal. I think this book is worth it. And it's a whole book, 4 chapters, introduction, all that, so we're going to be long. Anyways, thank you for tuning in. And I enjoy doing these videos for you. I hope you enjoy listening to them. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. And I hope you all have a great day.